we do wish you guys a happy birthday across the board. Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 to 27. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them." I will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them. We haven't seen many of you since Christmas Eve. It's been a couple of weeks since we've seen you. It's great to be back. And I don't know how your Christmas and your New Year's was, but I tend to find there's a bit of a vortex at this time of year. Who experiences the time vortex between Christmas and New Year's? That you get up and you're not quite sure what day it is. Who's been there? If you're in retirement, that's probably every day, I don't know. If you're on holidays, firstly. But there's a bit of a time vortex, and for me, that's the value of the Sabbath in many respects. I don't know when you practice your Sabbath rhythm. Obviously today is a key day, but that's the importance of the Sabbath, that we keep this rhythm connected in our lives, even when we're in the midst of a time vortex between Christmas and New Year's. But I hope you had a blessed time with family and friends. We went away on Boxing Day. We drove to Townsville, and how good is it travelling on Boxing Day? Who loves that? Travelling on Boxing Day, all right? What a genius invented that. And if you didn't know, between here and the Sunshine Coast, there's this new car park. Have you seen it? It's called the Bruce Highway, all right? Well, I think it took us about 2.5 hours to get from here halfway to the Sunshine Coast. At that point, tired and fatigued, we were loving on each other like nothing else, let me tell you that. But I do need your prayers. I do need your prayers today, because it's a really sad day for us. Yesterday was a sad and tragic day for us, because it was a day that our Christmas tree came down. Yeah, I know. Our Hetty is having a hard time adjusting, and she's going through a range of emotions at present, if you hadn't guessed. But it's fair to say that Helen is barely keeping it together, right? She is barely keeping it together this morning. But I want to know, what did you get for Christmas? I don't know if you've had this conversation yet, but what did you get for Christmas? Anyone get something special for Christmas? Yes? A Nintendo Switch, all right? Anyone get a Nintendo Switch for Christmas, all right? The over 60s, maybe? I don't know. I don't know if you got something special for Christmas, but what about board games? When you come together as a family at Christmas, do you play board games at this time of year? There's a game called Taboo. Have you ever heard of Taboo? It's a word game, and the idea of the taboo is that you have to you get a card and it tells you something, a thing or whatever, and you have to then describe that to those that are watching on without using that word or words associated to it. You ever played Taboo before? Okay, it's a word game, but I want to ask you, if you got the card in Taboo, as you got the word card in Taboo for 2022, how would you describe that? How would you describe the year 2022 to help others to guess it? If you could capture or characterise the year 2022, what word would you use? How would you describe you in 2022? How would you describe you? How would you describe your faith journey in 2022? Well, there's a list of top words for 2022, and I'm going to share a few of them with you. I don't know if this describes you at all, but a list of the top words in 2022. One was gaslighting. You heard the word gaslighting before? It became pretty popular in 2022. Manipulating someone so as to make them question their own reality. It's a bit of a contentious word, reality. Homer. Homer was one of the top words explored in 2022 in news. It simply means when you score a home run in baseball. Isn't that a bit bizarre? Baseball had a pretty good year in 2022, it says. Teal. Do you know what teal means in 2022? Teal is a political candidate who holds ideologically moderate views, but they support strong actions regarding the environment and climate change. So that might describe you as a teal, I don't know. Permacrisis. This is actually a pretty cool word. Permacrisis means an extended period of instability or insecurity. Permacrisis, permanent crisis almost. For some of us, we may have experienced that in 2022. Goblin mode, for those with our Nintendo Switches. Goblin mode, a type of behaviour which is unapologetically self-indulgent, lazy, slovenly, typically in a way that rejects social norms or expectations. Goblin mode. I don't know if you've been in goblin mode before. Metaverse, which is this virtual reality space in which users can interact with a computer-generated environment with other users. Woke. You heard the word woke before, maybe in 2022. A person marked by an active awareness of systemic injustices and prejudices. A finfluencer. A finfluencer is somebody who influences Finnish people. No, it's not. A finfluencer is an influencer who gives advice on financial investments. I don't know if we've got any influencers in the room. Anyone have lots of friends on Facebook or a YouTube channel? Maybe, I don't know, or Twitter feeds, all right? An influencer, finfluencer. A sharent, I think there's a few sharents here, to frequently use social media to share photos or other details and information about one's child. A sharent, all right? Put your hand up if you're a sharent in the room, perhaps. Okay, I can think of two sharents. Yeah, you're one of them, Andy. It's all good, brother. It's good to be a sharent. Fitspiration. Fitspiration is a personal thing that serves as motivation for somebody to sustain or improve health or fitness. Fitspiration. You know what motivates me to maintain health and fitness? A bit of money, right? All right, I'll do anything for $50. It's all good. Hangry. Bad-tempered or irritable as a result of hunger. And the other word for 2022 was woman. Woman. Up 1,400% on online dictionaries. And I think predominantly because people are trying to figure out these days this idea of binary men and women. What is the definition of a woman? Well, according to the dictionary, it's still an adult female person, you'd be pleased to know. But I want to ask you, friends, as you reflect on 2022, what is God saying to you as you look towards 2023? As you reflect upon 2022, what is God saying to you as you look towards 2023? What is the Spirit saying to you? And nephew Cooper, who's already identified one thing that he got for Christmas, he loves many things. He loves sushi, right? I don't know if he loves sushi. He loves his sushi. He loves salmon. He loves footy. He cried a little at this Christmas when he got a Cowboys football jersey. He cried. I don't know if you ever cried when you've got a present, but that's how overwhelmed and grateful he was. Cricket. He loves cricket, and he loves his new Nintendo Switch. But he was also really keen, which is what does my heart good, he was also really keen to go to Coorong and buy a new Bible, an adult Bible, right? Which was really cool for him to experience that. I love the fact that he has a love for God's Word. He has a love for God's Word. And when you look at Numbers 6, 24 to 27, friends, when you look at the Bible in general, it's this ancient text. If you didn't know, it's so readily available at Coorong. In fact, I didn't know if I felt good about this or not. It's so commodified. There's so many variations and themes and prices you can spend just to acquire one of these. But it's such an ancient text. And we actually, as you know, we don't have any originals because none of them actually survived. But that's not unusual, that originals of something doesn't survive. Julius Caesar, he kind of coined this text called On the Gallic Wars. And he coined that, pre-Jesus. But we don't have any original text of it. In fact, the earliest manuscripts we have were like 900 years later, okay, from a Julius Caesar text. The Nash Papyrus was discovered in 1902. In 2nd century BC, it records the 10 Commandments, Exodus and Deuteronomy, and it was used in Egyptian daily worship, okay? The Nash Papyrus, discovered in 1922, was a 2nd century text. the Dead Sea Scrolls, you heard of those before? Where do you think they were discovered? Where do you think they were discovered? Dead Sea. So it wasn't a trick. It was a trick question. The Dead Sea. It was discovered around the 1950s, 49 to 56, and in a place called Khirbet Qumran. 11 caves. They discovered these texts. 900 manuscripts, all but Nehemiah and Esther, were discovered. Okay, and they date back to 300 BC. 300 BC, all the way through to the 1st century AD. Before this, the earliest Old Testament complete manuscript we had was a Leningrad Codex, which was 1008 AD. But what was notable through all of those texts and through what we have today, what is notable is that very little had changed. Very little had changed. The integrity of the text was always there, and it was transmitted with incredible accuracy over 1,000 years. This is the gift of the Word of God today. Very little had changed from the origins, transmitted with incredible accuracy. In 1979, though, 2 years after I was born, 1975, in a burial cave site called Ketef Himrom, there were these scrolls discovered. They call them scrolls, they're actually amulets, that dated to the 7th century BC, so 600 years before Christ. These figurae amulets were discovered in about 1980 by a professor of archaeology at Tel Aviv Uni called Gabriel Barclay. He discovered these amulets the oldest things that we know of the origins of a scriptural text, the oldest reference to Yahweh. And do you know what was inscribed on the amulets? May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and grant you peace. However you come to characterise 2022, friends, whatever aspirations you have for 2023, may we come to embrace this most ancient of prayers. This most ancient of prayers. The Lord bless you. The oldest recorded biblical text for a new year. The Lord bless you. The blessings of God. Whilst we were on holidays in Townsville just recently, we've been there for about a week and a half or so, and as we were travelling up, unfortunately, Laura, my sister-in-law, had COVID. So we found out the day we were leaving that Laura was in isolation. So we were travelling to Townsville to see Laura. Obviously, she was in isolation. That couldn't happen. We went to Charters Towers, and when we were in Charters Towers, Helen's dad got COVID, all right, when we were there. And then, once we went back to Townsville, we were in the bus, and the bus broke down. We're in Townsville. All right, I was travelling across one car park to another across town. Have you ever had this experience? And you just know something's wrong with the car. I could just tell you're putting your foot down and the power wasn't quite happening, all right? I was in a shopping centre car park waiting for Helen, had the AC pumping because it was a bit hot, and then the car's losing power just by sitting there. So I thought, it's the battery. And with my extensive mechanic knowledge, I thought what I need to do now is drive around some more, get the battery powered. Is that right? Any mechanics? Anyway, so what I did was I looped the car park about 100 times because I was waiting for Helen, who did a 2-minute trip to the shops, all right? I looped the car park, and it got to a point, I was looping the car park, and it got to a point where I thought, somebody's going to come here and the police are going to turn up and say, what are you doing, bro? It was like I was staking the joint. I'm just still looping in the car park for about 20 minutes, and the car's still losing power. I went across town, and we went to another car park, got to this other car park, and literally, I was praying as we got to this other car park, it stopped just as I was backing into the car park. How good is that? Like, it seems like an inconvenience, but I was so grateful to God that we managed to get to another car park before, and I pushed the vehicle in, all right? I pushed the bus, thank you very much, yes, you're welcome. Up a hill, mind you, right? It's been well known for a long time that as soon as I flex, I increase my body weight twofold, all right? So just be careful, But in all of those experiences, because you're kind of thinking 2.5 hours to the Sunshine Coast, you're kind of thinking family getting COVID, which sucks for them, and we couldn't see them. You're kind of thinking when the car's breaking down, Lord Jesus, this is such a blessing, aren't you? You're kind of thinking that, aren't you? But it was. The blessing was God protected us. The blessing was God got us to a car park and we weren't on the side of a road when we had to deal with this issue. There are so many blessings, even in the mix of the unexpected stuff of life that doesn't quite go as you would expected it. Friends, the backdrop for this passage, this Numbers passage, is in Numbers, which is like Exodus part 2 in Numbers. The backdrop is that they're kind of in this wilderness experience, all right? This wilderness experience. In fact, Numbers, the book Numbers, means in the wilderness, all right, in many respects, the Hebrew in the wilderness. And the Israelites are at the foot of Mount Sinai, and there's preparations for them to go across into the Promised Land. There's preparations for them to go across into the Promised Land. They're organising the people into different functions and leadership and roles. So it's really about the organisation of their society, of this community of Israelites who are going into the Promised Land. And God orders a census, because the key goal was for them to travel in the kind of an ordered, well-ordered divisions. But essentially, out of all this organisation and structure, everything centred around the tabernacle. Everything centred around the presence of God. Every aspect of their lives centred around the presence of God. The whole organisation of their life, their roles, their identity, how they related to one another, how they centred their life and their existence around the presence of God. I wonder today if that's true for us. As you reflect on 2022, as you look ahead to 2023, is every part of your existence centred around the presence of God in your life? If I was to have a vision myself as a community of faith here in Carindale, this idea of a modern day covenant, if you will, would be that we would gather, that we would grow, and that we would serve. However we choose to organise our lives, whatever intricacies and priorities you have, first and foremost, I pray that as a modern day covenant with God, we would prioritise gathering, we would prioritise growing, and we would prioritise serving. How recognisable are we as God's people? As God's people. For some in ancient Israel, the organisation of one's life wholly around God looked like the Nazirite covenant. You may have read that earlier in chapter 6. There's Nazirite covenants. I don't know if you've set goals. This Nazirite covenant, Nazir, consecrating our lives, setting ourselves apart, the Nazirite covenant. For them, it meant not cutting your hair or shaving your beard. Who wants to commit to that this year? Some of us have got some great new haircuts, but let's be a church of hair growers. What do you reckon? All right, let's be a church of hair growers. They committed to not drinking alcohol. Some of us have committed to that hopefully already, which is pretty cool. They committed to not touching a dead body. All right, I'm in for that. I'm not a coroner. I'm okay with that. I can commit to that. They had nothing to do with death. This was part of the consecration as a Nazirite. Right? Samson, Samuel, John the Baptist, Paul, all of these guys from birth to life for a season, they made this commitment. But beyond the Nazirite covenant, whatever you're committing to yourself as an outward expression of your own holiness within, whatever you're committing to, beyond the Nazirite covenant, God ultimately says in verse 27, I will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them. I will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them. Because friends, it's God's impulse, it's God's initiative, it's God's action that makes all the difference. We are holy and set apart because of who God is and what God does in and through us, not because of our endeavours, not because of our habits or what we choose to wear. The New Living Version says, I will designate the Israelites as my people. They will be known, defined, find their meaning, purpose, substance and worth through God's blessing. I will designate the Israelites as my people. They will be known, defined, find their meaning, purpose, substance and worth through God's blessing. The Lord bless you. The Lord bless you, it says. What does this mean? What does this mean? What are we saying when we bless you? The other day, I have a few toilet stories with Hetty. I don't know why that is, but I think it's because I'm always in the toilet with her. The other day, she was in the toilets, and we heard her sneezing. We heard her sneezing, and when she sneezes, you know what she says? She says, I did a bless you. I did a bless you, which is really cute. I did a bless you, achoo. Because when we used to say that, you used to sneeze, and who says bless you when you sneeze? It used to be such a cheery sort of affirmation, a special exchange of pleasantry. But since COVID over the last few years, it's almost become like, I don't want to bless you, I want to get away from you. Forget about blessing you, I'm out of here, right? Over the past few years, it's almost like you need to get to a doctor and isolate, get away from me type situation. But when we say bless you in the Hebrew, barak, when we say bless you, which is used in the Psalms extensively and in Deuteronomy as well, bless you means to pronounce God's ultimate goodness towards another. To pronounce God's ultimate goodness towards another. That God's divine favour would rest upon you. It's an empowering and transforming word that accomplishes its purposes. In that, it's not just words. When you say bless you, it's not just words. It means that God has and will bless you in every way. Dallas Willard explains it like this. Blessing is the projection of good into the life of another. It isn't just words. It's a profoundly personal and powerful act. It's a generous outpouring of one's whole being into the blessing of another person. The Lord bless you. The Lord blesses you. God himself pours himself out for you and pours himself out into you. The Lord blesses you. A Catholic priest, John Donahue, says this: a blessing touches that tender membrane where the human heart cries out to its divine ground. In the ecstasy and loneliness of one's life, there are certain times when a blessing is nearer to us than any other person or thing. A blessing is not a sentiment or a question. It's a gracious invocation where the human heart pleads with the divine heart. There is nothing more intimate in life than the secret under territory where it anchors. God, friends, is the source of all blessing. And at the heart of God's blessing is his presence. For the Israelites, that represented the tabernacle, which all the society was orchestrated around. When we gather, when we grow, and when we serve, we orchestrate our lives around God. When we gather, when we grow, and when we serve, we orchestrate our lives around God. And we know that it's no longer about a tabernacle per se, but the presence of God is all about Jesus, God's Spirit everywhere, for everyone, for all time. God is with us, friends, today. I hope you believe that. But how close are you with God? The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord bless you and keep you. May He protect you. We fail, we falter, we sometimes give up, but He never does. He is forever patient. The Lord make His face shine upon you. Another body idiom. The Lord make His face shine upon you. Yahweh, the personal name of God, Yahweh, relates closely to us. He faces us. He speaks deeply into our souls. Yahweh, the Lord, which echoes the Trinity in itself. This personal God defined in community. The communal God faces us. The face of God, I don't know if you've thought about that. We know as Jesus today, but if you've ever thought about that from an ancient perspective, the face of God. This personification of God, this being beyond everything, is personified. The face of God looking upon each of us. May God's face shine upon you, turn towards you, smile upon you. Because if you didn't know, God's pleased with you. If you didn't know, God's pleased with you. Sometimes we have a hard time believing that. God is pleased with you. I may have shared this story before, but a few years back I saw a video and it was about attachment theory. And it was about a small baby looking at the parent's face. And then the parent was tasked with just a sociological experiment of ignoring the child, looking away, not facing the child who was looking for their attention. And you can see over those few minutes the distress of a baby when the mother just ignores the child. This incredible connection that goes on. Children really do gauge their sense of who they are through their parents, through the big people in their life. They gain the sense of who they are through the big people in their life. And friends, the same is true of us with God. We ultimately gain our sense of who we are as we look into the face of God, because He is pleased with us. He looks upon us and He responds to us. He is gracious towards us. God faces us and smiles. He is merciful and compassionate and ever patient. Some of us struggle, believe it or not, to face ourselves. Maybe there are some of us today who struggle to face ourselves, let alone look at God. I want to ask you, in the face of God, what is your response today? Whatever 22 has been, whatever 2023 will be, God's face shines upon you and His favour rests on you. This is the blessing of God. His forgiveness, His acceptance, His perpetual love, God's very life and presence. And this was prophesied, this was prayed over a disobedient, imperfect people 3,500 years ago at the foot of Mount Sinai, God's chosen people. This was the blessing spoken over them before they entered the promised land. We sometimes think that when we get what we hope for, what we expect, what we've been praying for, that's when the fulfillment of God's goodness is realised in my life. This was prayed over before they went, friends, because the blessing of God isn't about reaching the promised land. It's about where you are now, whatever context you're in. God says, I will bless you, I will protect you, I will show you my grace, my compassion, my favour. I will put my name on you. I will put my name on you. I don't know if you remember a show called Toy Story. Who remembers Toy Story? I don't remember it that well, but isn't there a scene in Toy Story where Andy writes his name on him or something? Do you remember that? Andy puts his name on his foot. Yeah. And how significant was that for the toy? Was it the cowboy? I'm all over this show. How significant was that? God puts His name on us, friends. And He says, I will give you my peace. Verse 26, I will give you my peace. God says, I will never be unfaithful to my covenant promises, even when you are. I will never be unfaithful to my covenant promises, even when you are. My name is on the bottom of your foot, if you will. From the outset of 2023, He says to each of us today, the Lord blesses us. with the ultimate goodness and power and goodness of his presence. The Lord keeps us secure in the knowledge of him and his will. The Lord makes his face shine upon us and is gracious to us. The Lord turns his face towards us and gives us peace. I'm going to ask the musos to come up. My prayer is that this would characterise in some way 2023 for each of us. If there was going to be a word for 2023, may it be the word of blessing. May it be Barak upon each of us. May this be our filter and our foundation, what we build our lives upon, the blessing and presence of God. May it also be the way we see the world around us and ourselves through the blessings and presence of God. May we believe and receive this promise, and may we know God's blessing so that we can be a blessing, so that we can be a blessing. You know, if others were to characterise a word for you in 2022, I wonder what that would be. How would they describe you in 2022, those around you who know you? 2023, how do you want to be known? My prayer, friends, is that you are blessed to be a blessing. We are blessed to bless others. Let's pray. Jesus, I pray today that you would help us in the midst of our journey, as we travel with you and as we travel together. May we know this promise of thousands of years ago, this prayer upon our lives. May we know the face of God as he looks upon us. May we know a God who wants to bless us with all good things. May the promise of his presence be our anchor of existence and our inspiration to live. May it come to characterise and define everything that we are as we orientate our lives around you, Jesus. May you direct us in 2023. Forgive us, because as we look back, we can all confess today that we've made mistakes and we have failed you in our humanity, in our fallibility. We have let you down, God, whether it's unintentionally or intentionally. We want to acknowledge that and confess that today. But secure in the knowledge that you're a God who never lets us down, who never abandons us, who never looks away from us. As we crave and yearn for your attention, may we just know that you've given it and you give it and you give it. May we never doubt you. As we stand at the foot of our own Mount Sinai and we look upon the promises of whatever is to come, may we be secure in your presence, Jesus, just now. May we orientate everything that we are around you just now. And as we sing this song, may this be a confessional to you. May this be a declaration of who we are. And may we be a blessing, Jesus, in the way that you are a blessing to us. This is our prayer. We pray in your precious name. Friends, in these moments, I invite you to pray and worship. Come forward for prayer if you need it. We invite you to approach God with the same freedom and love and devotion that he approaches us. He gives us the gateway. He gives us the open way to him. The access to him has been paid for. I pray that we would exercise that. We would use that this year, that we would devote ourselves not just to an ancient text, which is such a source of life, but prayer itself as we commune and talk to God. Let's take these moments to worship and pray.